You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the capitalist corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the capitalist corner.
Welcome to the Capitalist Corner, everybody. I am your host, Michael Liebowitz. Mark Pellegrino will be joining us any moment. As far as I know, he said he just got in. I don't know what exactly that means, but I take it that it means he will be joining us shortly. We got a lot to talk about today, but before we get into that, let me just tell you, I've got a great episode of The Rational Egoist out right now on the history of atheism. If you enjoy that type of discussion, you've got to check it out. It's live on The Rational Egoist on both Spotify and YouTube. And not only that, but yesterday I was on the Burn Barrel podcast with Tom Shattuck, who is formerly a host of his own radio show at WTIC in Connecticut, now fills in for Howie Carr in Massachusetts. We had a great discussion about Donald Trump, kind of a debate, but more of an informal discussion and disagreement. Check it out. I think you'll find it fantastic. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. Also remember about the super chats and the super stickers, because those are freaking awesome. Marcus said he's not getting the link. Maybe that's because I didn't send it to him. So that would be that would be my fault, of course. Of course, I'm going to tell him, what do you mean I didn't send you the link? See how that goes over. All right, let's see. Copy. So we're going to talk today about just war theory. We're going to talk about the news in Iran. We're going to talk about this chap who is being nominated out there for the Federal Reserve, some updates from yesterday's show. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. Hello, Robert. Hello, Nicole Hingle. Hello, Katrin. Hello, Jeanette. And soon we'll be saying hello to Mark. So yesterday, Mark and I talked about Kevin Warsh. Oh, go to Twitch too, folks. Follow us on Twitch. That'd be great to do as well. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know what you're doing, why you couldn't find the first link I sent, but I resent it.
Thank you so much. That's because it's once I get on my computer, I have to wait for all the text to download.
That's what happened?
Yeah, hold on a second. So it takes forever.
Okay.
Hold on, sorry.
Now he's muting. He's late and he's muting. But anyway, so Mark and I talked about yesterday this Kevin Warsh guy and how we were surprised, kind of given his history of advocating for higher interest rates. We were surprised that Trump would, task him or tap him rather for the Federal Reserve head. But it turns out he's had an about face and not so much for the low interest rates any longer. Mark, I forgot to send you the link. It had nothing to do with your computer.
Oh, okay, you did. All right, good. I thought maybe it wasn't coming up in my text on my computer, which is typical.
Yeah. So now they had this hearing, and it looks like they're skeptical of getting this guy up there. Tom Tillis, as we said yesterday, said not until they dropped the case against Jerome Powell. But also, what are you doing?
I'm writing.
No, that's making a lot of noise, and it's annoying.
Okay, I'll be done in a second.
What?
Go ahead.
All right. So that's what I had to do. I had to mute Mark. He flat out refused to answer, some questions. He danced around the idea that the economy was really bad because he didn't want to contradict Trump. So I could see why they would have a problem with this guy. But let's see what Mark thinks. Go ahead, Mark. What do you think about what I sent you this morning about Kevin Warsh?
Yeah, it figured you'd start with this. I just have there he goes. As I just sent him a little text, folks, I didn't have a chance to read this particular article, so it figures that he would start with this, just because I think he has he's just inherently ready to bust my balls. But if this guy had a high interest rate perspective before, and he wanted to control inflation before, he's certainly not going to be Trump's nominee. Michael, did you read my text that I sent you?
Which one?
This one right here in the chat.
No, I didn't see you. I was up. How could I have read it, Mark, when I left my chair?
Because it was vital that you did, because I wrote it before you asked me the question.
Oh, okay. So Mark couldn't read up on this morning. It's the one subject, and I sent him a mountain of information. I just wanted to give a quick update anyway, Mark, to be honest, because we did discuss this yesterday, and you and I were a bit, confused about why Trump would pick him. But now I think I know why, and so we know. Let me tell you what happened this morning. I woke up at 2:00. I couldn't get back to sleep, so I decided to get up at 3:00. Now, when I get up that early, the latest news isn't there, so I've got to run around searching for news to read about. And I came across this just war idea that, you and I have talked about a little bit, but I wanted to do a deeper dive. So we're going to get into that in just a moment, Mark. But first, the news coming out of Iran. Trump says, I don't know what the hell this even means, to be honest, but that he's going to, after saying no, he was not interested in extending the ceasefire. Now he's saying he is going to extend the ceasefire. He says because there's disarray at the top in Iran. So the question is for me, first of all, if the leadership is in disarray and he already knows that, who the hell is he going to be negotiating with? But he also said something that I found very bizarre. He said the ceasefire is going to hold until they submit their proposal. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. What I think, and of course this is just, speculation. What I think happened is the Donald is in way over his head. He thought this was going to be much easier than it's turned out to be. He said that he didn't know it was going to affect the United Arab Emirates, so now we're giving money evidently to them because he didn't anticipate they would have problems. There's also some evidence, I sent you the article, that our weaponry is getting depleted, not necessarily for this conflict, but potential future conflict. And I think he's just like, oh my God, I never expected this. What the hell can I do to get out of it? That's my take. That's just, that part's pure speculation, but it's based on some evidence. So what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, do you know of any evidence, Michael, that the administration in the regime is in disarray? I mean, we certainly know that they've taken out some head honchos, but other people who are more ideologically pure have taken over for those spots. They're they're more entrenched, less inclined to diplomatic interaction with us. It doesn't seem like they're in disarray at all. So I don't know where they're getting the proof that there's various factions that are fighting each other for dominance here, and that they simply can't find a coherent message. Their coherent message is, we refuse to negotiate with you until you take the blockade off. In other words, until there's a diplomatic victory for them. So Trump is really between a rock and a hard place. In my view, he has to push forward, but he's under tremendous pressure from his own anti-war nationalists, the libertarian part of his coalition that seems to be crumbling now, that voted for him because he wasn't going to get us into any foreign wars. He's now in deeper than he thought he would. He thought he was probably going to, take care of this whole problem in a couple of weeks, as he claimed. Now he's seen that it's a little bit more difficult than he anticipated. He talks about, Michael, all of the infrastructure that they damaged, how they sunk their Navy. Yeah, but they didn't sink the gunboats that the IRGC uses, which actually just captured 3 ships today in the Straits of Hormuz. And he talks about degrading the regular army, but still very little damage done to the IRGC. They're the ones who are running the show. These are the important political and military actors that he has to take care of, and he doesn't seem willing to do that. So, Michael, I'm not sure where this is going to go, because he has to, if he wants to salvage some form of victory, he has to push forward. But by the same token, that's going to mean putting boots on the ground, because I don't think there's any other way to do it now. It's going to mean taking out infrastructure that he's uncomfortable with. It's going to mean escalating the war in a way that the American people are not comfortable with. Why? Because they did not approve of this war in the first place.
This is true. Jenna Kleem says, war talk distresses me, so I'm turning down the volume, but she's going to continue to gaze upon me. Thank you, Jenna.
Wow.
Thank you for both.
What am I, chopped liver?
You are kind of, but thank you for the $5 and your gaze. Rob Lakenheath says no diplomatic deal is possible with Islamic terrorists.
Exactly.
Ian Gilmore says the Iranian regime seems like it's fragmented. Well, that's true. And they also don't seem to be able to. Nobody really knows what the head religious guy over there is doing. But to Mark's point, the IRGC is where the power is. It seems, and it seems like it's been this way. And they seem like they have no interest in negotiating or conceding or anything else, right? I mean, they're just. And I think that when you have this, the ceasefire just keeps getting extended and extended. And to me, all that's doing is giving the Iranians chance to regroup. One of the articles mentioned how they're, able to now go dig up more weaponry that they've got buried other places, missiles and whatnot. Their weaponry hasn't been completely obliterated, as Trump says. So they're going to be regrouping. Now, I'm going to use that kind of as a segue, Mark, into some of the things that Trump has threatened to do, obliterate the civilization, blow Iran up, are clearly in violation of a lot of things. But you've mentioned just war theory in the past, so I did quite a bit of reading up on the subject this morning. So I do want to discuss it, and on some points I kind of want to play devil's advocate, not too much, but a little bit as we discuss this. So I'm just going to read this straight because then it gives us the point to set this off. I'm getting a call from some spam group right now. Okay, just war theory is a moral and legal framework that balances the need to prevent unjust aggression with the ethical, restricted use of violence. It compromises three main pillars: jus ad bellum, conditions for starting the war; jus in bella, moral conduct during the war; and just post bellum, justice after the war. I think that your problem is mostly going to be with the jus in bello, i.e. moral conduct during the war. So, just cause, war is allowed only to defend against attacks, protect the innocent, or restore justice. Legitimate authority, only duly constituted governments can declare war, not private individuals. It must be governed by right intention. The goal must be to achieve a just peace, not for vengeance, territory, or economic gain. Last resort, all peaceful diplomatic alternatives must be exhausted. A reasonable hope of success, and the overall destruction caused by the war must not outweigh the good achieved. Now, here's where you I think, have some issues. Distinction, discrimination. Armed forces must distinguish between combatants and non-combatants, civilians, protecting the latter. Proportionality, the force used in any specific battle or action must be proportionate, avoiding unnecessary excessive destruction. And then justice and rehabilitation, the goal should be a lasting peace, which includes restoring the rights of the defeated and rebuilding rather than vengeance. This goes, I thought this was a relatively new doctrine, but evidently it goes back to St. Augustine of Hippo. Aquinas further elaborated on it. Of course, Hugo Grotius, Vittoria. There was another guy, I don't remember his name. But anyway, so what I want to know, Mark, so that I can kind of poke at you a little bit, what are your... Jim Valiant says it's all crap. Okay, is it all crap? You got to get yourself off mute.
Thank you very much.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
I do think the one thing that is correct in it is that a just war is defensive. So that we know that the real war crime is initiating the war against a power that now must defend itself. So a defensive war is a just war, in my view. Now, where it goes off to me is in the method with which a defending power must go about winning the war, because the object should be winning the war and defeating the aggressor. That has to be the sole object. Sometimes that's going to mean doing things that are very unfortunate. Now, whenever civilian casualties can be avoided, provided it doesn't hinder the objective or tip off the enemy in such a way as to make destroying them and annihilating the capacity to go on any more difficult, fine. But if it hinders the progress towards unconditional surrender, then it's not just. It's just restraining the decent and the moral and the good from defeating the aggressive bad guy.
But, Mark, from my reading this morning, even the advocates of the just war doctrine would concede that there's going to be civilian casualties, collateral damage, just that it should be avoided. You know, if you've got, for instance, militants hiding amongst the civilian population, that sort of thing, they would say that that's fine. So what is your main difference?
Well, unfortunately, in the asymmetrical warfare that we see today, predominantly what these bad powers like Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah are doing are embedding their military infrastructure in civilian areas, knowing full well that the Western powers governed by this just war theory are going to be more hesitant to attack or to give some kind of warning to the military infrastructure, or what supposedly to the civilian infrastructure, but certainly tipping off the military infrastructure before they do attack in an attempt to avoid unnecessary casualties, which of course makes them operate at a handicap. You know, the fact that Israel thinks it has to go in and drop flyers and warn everybody that they're going to hit a particular building. So then later on you see a locked off camera looking at a building. This is from Hamas's PR point of view, and a missile suddenly hit it, as if, you know, they magically knew that this missile was going to hit this particular, but they didn't magically know. They were told by the IDF beforehand that they could do that, so that the innocents and the bad guys can have an opportunity to escape. So I think it's taken to the extreme, Michael. Anybody tries to practice an ethics in the extreme, in the most consistent fashion. And so even though it might sound good on paper that you want to avoid civilian casualties, what it winds up being is embedded military infrastructure in civilian areas that we can't hit because of the civilian casualties involved.
So I'm really not seeing, I guess my problem is I'm not seeing a real disagreement here with just war theory coming from you, not from what I've read today. You know, Akira Felix says it's complete BS. Okay. I think part of it is separating what just war theory actually says from the actual actions of governments and how they practice it. Because nothing, for instance, in what I read today anyway, and it was quite a bit, would say that you can't target terrorists if they're hiding amongst a civilian population and attacking you from behind them. And I just wonder, so would you, I'm thinking in terms of, okay, so is anything that you have to do to defeat the enemy, and is nothing off limits?
I would say that if something impedes your progress towards defeating the enemy, it's wrong. So you have to do whatever is militarily feasible for you to make the enemy completely surrender. For example, it could be an example that will not be politically correct, of course. I don't think that the Israelis should have sent a single foot soldier into Gaza. I think they should have bombed it into oblivion. Plain and simple. Instead, in defense of this just war theory and treating the Palestinians as equals to the Israeli citizens, they sent the military foot soldiers in there in an attempt to go house to house to flush out Hamas. Of course, now subjecting these people to death, injury, PTSD, years and years and years and years of damage, and they took multiple casualties that they didn't have to. When I think they should have gone in, and if the foot soldiers came in, it was simply to clean up what was there and to rescue the hostages that were remaining, dead or alive, plain and simple.
Okay, I'm going to split my focus in this discussion between you and Akira. Akira says that's a different conversation. Anything good with just war theory can be found elsewhere. Well, that's fine, but then as soon as I went somewhere else, I cited that, somebody could tell me anything found here could be found in just war theory. So whether bits and pieces can be found somewhere else, I want to know what the critique, what the argument is against just war theory. So if the argument, for instance, is when you go to war, you do whatever it takes to win. And it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying you're making this argument, Mark. I'm putting a hypothetical out there. If the argument is you do whatever it takes to win and you destroy every impediment in civilians, there are no civilians in war. Let's just say that, right? And the normal morality doesn't apply in war. Well, would it be okay then for an invading army in an attempt to get the civilian population to capitulate, which ultimately you're gonna usually need is for the civilian population to comply? Would it be okay for military men to go into these countries and just rape every woman that they possibly could?
No, I don't think raping is a military act. It doesn't.
No, but wait, hold on though. But if it could, if the goal is to get the population, the local population, to submit, you could torture children, you can rape women. I mean, you could rape the men. I mean, there's an abundance of things that you could do. So my point in bringing the extremes in here is because then we're going to say, no, there is some morality when you fight a war.
No, I don't think. Look, in the same way that I don't think if a person breaks into my house to murder me, raping him and torturing him is achieving my end of stopping him. I simply have to stop him. I simply have to stop him and make sure the threat is permanently neutralized. Everything else is outside of those moral parameters. I mean, the raping, the pillaging, the torturing, all of that stuff, that's outside of the moral parameters of attempting to win the war, in my view. I mean, you can make the claim that doing this demoralizes the population.
Well, sure, it would.
But Sherman made the claim that he had to take the war to the civilian population in Georgia, march through Georgia and burn their plantations to the ground. Now, he didn't rape and pillage. He didn't do anything.
South Carolina?
In Georgia.
Okay, I thought it was South Carolina.
Georgia.
But I digress. Persephone, find out because I need to know now. Go ahead, Mark.
But the point was he thought that the planter class was the one that was funding the war. The planter class was the one that was benefiting the war. The planter class was significantly the one who was not fighting the war, and they needed to feel the war by having it brought to their doorsteps. That didn't mean raping and pillaging, but it meant certainly taking out their economic incentives and destroying them as an economic power.
I'm trying to identify a principle so I can make a hypothetical, because that's the point of what I'm trying to do. Because I don't like unrealistic hypotheticals, but in the history of warfare, raping and pillaging is certainly a part of it. So it's not
as is enslaving entire population.
Right. So it's not an unrealistic hypothetical that I'm putting forward. But okay, so could you torture the local population? Would that be okay?
Or this also depends on why. For example, if somebody has information that
no, to get them to surrender, could you torture civilians?
I don't think it advances the military goal.
Okay, then why would bombing indiscriminately civilian areas?
I didn't say indiscriminately. But
I'm okay.
Possible.
Okay,
but in asymmetrical warfare, when they have military stuff, where they have equipment, and personnel embedded in the population, don't warn them. Certainly, don't warn them.
All right. So then there are rules even to warfare. There are some moral rules even in war. Thank you, Mark. You were right. It was Georgia. There are moral rules to war then.
Well, I mean, it's to win. I certainly will fight dirty if I have to neutralize somebody who's trying to kill me. And I might gouge their eye out. I might do all kinds of stuff that I wouldn't do if I'm in a ring with somebody or on the mat with somebody. So in other words, the rules are much wider because I'm in an existential crisis. I'm not training. I'm there to defend my existence, which means I might have to be a lot more brutal than I would ordinarily be in,
Okay.
some other circumstance.
So Ian Gilmore says you have to make the argument that it would be a rational idea to do it, not just assume it. I said if it is. But by that logic, Ian, then I would like you or Mark or anybody else to show me a single history, the history of warfare, a single time that goals of the type that Mark is talking about have been accomplished by air power alone. That would be the first thing, because Mark said not a single boot on the ground. But I'm assuming that he's, I'm willing to assume his position because I'm trying to get at the principle. The principle I'm trying to arrive at is, are there rules? By rules, I mean moral principles that are applicable in warfare. Now, my normal argument has been, okay, so I wanted to say this. So Ian, yes, Ian. Ian says there isn't one in response to taking out a country that is, by air power alone. He said he wouldn't make that argument. No, but you didn't tell Mark, prove that you can do it, find a way to do it. You came to me to do it because it seemingly would sympathize with that view. And that's kind of my point. Not you. No, but Mark, what I want to know...
I wasn't assuming that Israel would be able to take them out by air power alone, but certainly flatten all of Gaza so that, and then...
But you said they shouldn't have sent in a single soldier, Mark.
They shouldn't have sent in a single soldier under the conditions which they did, which was to fight house to house in order to protect and defend the Palestinian civilians, which they held in the moral light on a same level as their own citizens.
Okay. So then it isn't just don't send the troops in. It's don't send the troops in that way.
Yes.
Okay. So we got $10 coming from Robert Naser. He says, being shy and quiet, I only got in a couple fights in my youth, and I never learned the rules, how to fight fair, so I always won. It turns out there are rules, limits, some things you do not do. Now, my normal inclination, Mark, has always been... Well, you do whatever you have to do in war, right? But as I press myself psychologically, or introspectively on these things, I see that there are limits to what I would advocate. So then that tells me, okay, there are limits. I think what is desperately needed is for somebody to articulate a theory of war based on objectivist ethics. So and then we would have something rational to argue with, because I do see, a lot of just war theory is no good. I mean, Leonard Peikoff in 2000 went on Bill O'Reilly and was advocating the complete destruction of Iran, right, at the time, but it was based on false premises.
With nuclear weapons, yeah, he did.
Right. So, I mean, that doesn't seem to me like he was being a rational actor. I mean, I shouldn't say not rational. I should say his conclusions were wrong, in my view, at that time. And so his policy prescriptions were wrong. And so I think we do need, yes, a rational war theory. Ian Gilmore says, from Rock Chartrand, he said, would increasing the harshness of actions in war be justified more so over time by the enemy's refusal to surrender? Again, so my inclination is to say yes. But whenever I argue with myself, if I find that I end up defending positions that I don't want to defend, I double back and I see what is leading me to this. It might be the case that, yes, indeed, this harshness, even the implication is correct, but oftentimes it's not. So Akira Felix says, of course, the bad guys are allowed to use children as cover, but if the good guys shoot in self-defense, they are accused of genocide. Completely fair. But that's not what just war theory says.
Well, but wait a minute. One of the things I read about just war theory, at least the way it's practiced by these, at least the way it's set out by the various conventions like the Hague and the Geneva Conventions, is that it's non-reciprocal. In other words, it doesn't matter if the enemy is not abiding by it. And to me, that's not a rational case for.
Well,
that you cannot be in that situation with an enemy. If somebody's has no rules, but you have to stick to them, you are handicapping yourself. And I wanted
Okay.
to tell Robert Nasser, a war is not a schoolyard fight. I mean, they're
No,
very different.
I think Robert knows, but
Yeah, but it's not just there
no,
are
no, no, no.
rules. There are certainly rules when you're fighting somebody, like, just, it's a
But
barroom
Mark, you've
brawl.
conceded there are rules in war too.
I've conceded that. Let's say I've conceded that I think there are parameters. I think there's one rule to win, but I do think that these other expressions that you say could potentially demoralize the population enough to win the war don't seem that way to me. They just seem like extraneous
But
physical
but
torment on something.
okay, but once you say do whatever it takes to win the war, that's the goal. Then,
One
but
assumes that means killing people.
okay,
And taking out infrastructure and completely taking out their financial system and capacity to
what? Okay, I want to know from Akira Felix, what context am I ignoring? I started off to discuss just war theory. So what context am I ignoring? I spent about 2 hours this morning reading on this subject, and I've thought about this stuff in the past. So I want to know from Akira, what context do you think that I am ignoring? Because if you say that the goal is to win at any cost, meaning at any cost to anybody else other than your own citizens, then you're going to inevitably be pushed into situations. I mean, look, the IRGC is not going to surrender, it doesn't look like. Right?
Correct.
So, okay. So do we nuke Iran knowing there will be nuclear fallout that's going to go to the countries on the sides of it? Would that be okay? Because, civilian casualties are acceptable. We can make the argument, well, those other countries have allowed Iran to get powerful. They haven't done enough in the past. We need to take out Iran and those other countries be damned. Would that be okay?
I don't think that should necessarily be off the table. I think strategic nuclear weapons shouldn't be off the table. I don't think they should have been off the table in 1950 in Korea when MacArthur urged Truman to do it in China. They certainly weren't off the table during World War II, and they shouldn't certainly be off the table here.
So let me now bring this around a little bit. So the argument is that, well, the rape and the torture and that sort of thing wouldn't actually facilitate good ends. They wouldn't achieve our goals. But somehow nuking a country, so you're killing children, you're killing women, you're killing non-combatants, you end up killing people in the surrounding countries who are going to be affected by that. And we don't see how that could end up being a monumental problem, that might not necessarily cause what we're looking to do or create everlasting peace for us. You see, there's Ian wants to know what I think about the nukes dropped on Japan. Generally speaking, and I haven't, done an incredibly deep dive on the issue, but I think that Japan refused to surrender. I think that Japan...
No, they did. It's not true.
Japan agreed to an unconditional surrender prior to the nukes?
No, you said refused to surrender. You didn't say
okay. No, you're right. What I'm talking about is the unconditional surrender.
Correct.
Japan refused an unconditional surrender. They were still fighting. As far as I know from history, there were still Japanese hiding in woods fighting the war, like in the 70s, trying to carry this thing.
There was one who came home in like 1976 to a hero's welcome, I might add.
Right. And you're also talking about a context that gets ignored so much. Iran is not Japan. Iran is not Nazi Germany. Yes, they've attacked some U.S. Servicemen overseas. They've done a lot of killing. They have done nothing that is remotely commensurate to the bombing of Pearl Harbor or to the devastation that both Hitler and, of course, Mussolini as well in Japan wreaked on the world. It's not even close. And so my inclination is to say, yes, it was just because it ended up saving American lives in that context. That doesn't mean I'm not open to a strong argument.
I mean, a tactical nuke, Michael, something delivered from an artillery piece, could take out, some of the spots in which they're hiding all of these ballistic missiles. They hide them in these mountain compounds that are difficult to get to. A nuclear weapon could take all of that out in a second, as opposed to using tons and tons and tons of conventional ordnance and throwing millions upon millions upon millions of dollars into this thing, you could take it out with a single weapon much more easily. And that's efficient. It's certainly efficient because they hide these things, and they're using this time during the ceasefire to bring those things up from underground, put them around the Straits of Hormuz, and attack people.
All right. I'm really having a fun time here. So let's
Good,
see.
me too.
Akira Felix says, I'm not arguing against your argument. I'm arguing that Israel essentially goes by just war theory, and it leads them to be accused of genocide. Okay, I want to see how Israel is beholden to just war theory as it's actually elucidated, and how going by just war theory leads them to be accused of genocide. I would love to say, no, Ian Gilmore, no one's saying Iran is Japan. I'm explaining to you why I would likely have supported the nuking of Japan, while I would not support the nuking of
But by the way,
Iran.
Under this concept of the just war theory has, I think, laid moral foundations in our society that are maybe perverse and strange and a little bit off the track of just war theory. People are now questioning whether or not it was just for America to drop the bombs because the Japanese were willing to surrender.
Mark, they questioned it back then. It's not new.
No, but I'm saying it's a movement now in the same way
Eisenhower questioned it.
In the same way that people thought the earth was flat 700 years ago. There are now people out there who are reinvigorating the flat earth theory.
So now
that is.
Okay, so this is part, in my view, of the issue. So Jeanette says if Iran gets nukes, they will use them. Okay. Now, if our own intelligence says that they weren't ready to get nukes, that they weren't even trying to get them, the IAEA says they weren't trying to get them, even if they were trying to get them, our intelligence says they couldn't put them on an ICBM for at least 10 more years. So based on Iran potentially seeking a nuclear weapon that they wouldn't be able to use against us for at least 10 more years, we should nuke them right now. Not you, Mark. That's the question I'm putting toward Jeanette.
Rock said something. If you want to call that out, that would be great because it's a little small for my reading here.
Well, Rock says,
go ahead.
See, I want to go by evidence, right? And when I go by evidence, I don't care how many people it puts me against. Rock says Iran's intention is to do whatever they can get away with, but they aren't capable of. Okay. Other than the 60% uranium, which is evidence that they're trying to get a bomb, but there's also other reasons they could have went to 60%. What is your evidence that they were pursuing a nuke and were going to use it? Because we know there was a fatwa given in 2003 against nuclear weapons. Since 2007, I believe, our intelligence has said they're not trying to get nuclear weapons. When the JCPOA was intact, they were only enriched to, I think, 3%. Trump comes in, gets out of the deal, and then they enrich to 60, but our intelligence still says they aren't trying to get a weapon, and so does the International Atomic Energy Agency. But by the way, who are the ones that say they're at 60%. So I'm not just going to take some of the evidence into play. And by the way, none of this means that Iran is good or that we should never go to war with them. What I want to do, though, is have a fact-based discussion about going to war to them. I Like Numbers says, why did they need the JCPOA if Iran wasn't trying to get nukes? I don't know. Ask them. I didn't advocate for the JCPOA. I just know what the intelligence says. And if you have information that our intelligence doesn't have or claims they don't have, then put it forward. But I'm sorry. While I distrust intelligence greatly, you know who I distrust even more? Random dudes on the internet who tell me that Iran is close to nukes.
Fair.
I mean, right? Right?
Yeah.
You know, and all of this to say, I think going to war with Iran is a just thing to do. But what I want to do is, because I've heard a lot of criticisms of this just war theory, I want to identify where that theory is wrong. But now I want to move on, Mark. Unless you, I mean, you could say something else if you want.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. Where's this? I want to back up. I don't know who's saying what now. Okay. So I wanted to know also, because for people that advocate sort of Mark's position, which I'm very sympathetic to, right? But so I was curious about agreements that America got into. So we've got a president who already violated the Constitution to get us into a war. So I asked this question. I gotta back up just a little here. Okay, it did the same thing to me again, where it erased my earlier chat. The standards apply. We did agree. There's many agreements that we have, including Geneva Conventions, The Hague, and a lot of implied agreements of international law about harming civilians, that sort of thing. And the core rule: obligations are not reciprocal. Under the Geneva Convention, protection for civilians are not conditional on the enemy's behavior. Each party must follow the rules independently. You don't get legal permission to target civilians because the other side does. This principle is sometimes called non-reciprocity in humanitarian law. So now, here's the reason for that. And it makes sense to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but it says, if the rules depended on reciprocity, they would collapse immediately. One side violates, the other side retaliates, protections disappear entirely, civilians become bargaining chips rather than protected persons. The system is designed to preserve a baseline of humanity, even in asymmetric or brutal conflicts.
Yes, and this is precisely what the other side does to the people abiding by these rules. They use the human beings as bargaining chips. They attack them ruthlessly, and the other side does not reciprocate. And so I think the bad guys are empowered by that kind of rule. You know, bad guys don't want reciprocal violence against them, Michael. They would prefer to get away with it without, get away with what they get away with without being hurt if they can help it. But if they know that if they attack a citizen, they're going to pay an incredible price for it. If they take a citizen hostage, there will be no negotiating with them. Then I think they will be thinking twice. They're not, I mean, with Hamas, with Hezbollah, with some of these Islamicists, they're not so glued to life as a criminal might be, just a typical criminal. They don't mind necessarily dying for their cause. But certainly those who are not as ideal.
But Mark, this is nothing in these agreements. It rules out attacking a combatant in that situation. It rules out indiscriminately killing civilians. So it says what does change when the enemy violates the rules.
But they call it killing indiscriminately. They've been calling what the Israelis have been doing to Hamas indiscriminate killing when it isn't.
Okay, but I want to talk about the actual rules, not what they are saying about it. I want to talk about what just war theory actually is and what the agreements that we've entered into actually say. So according to this, when military necessity becomes harder to balance if an enemy hides among civilians, uses human shields, embeds military assets in civilian areas, then attacks may still be lawful if they meet proportionality and distinction. But civilian risk often increases.
Well, now, what does proportionality mean? Again,
it means to achieve your goal. It has to be proportional to the goal you're trying to achieve.
Certainly, that's not the way it's interpreted. Most people interpret it as a tit for tat exchange.
Okay, I
know you want to stick to what's written, but Michael, if what's written can be interpreted in such a broad way as to make people take it literally, then
it should go.
Yeah, perhaps.
Okay, then you've just advocated for getting rid of the United States Constitution.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have.
No,
You're saying if you just said if what's written can be interpreted so broadly as to go beyond whatever meaning it has, get rid of it.
Not for human conduct in general, but for an emergency situation like war, where
So
one side is in an existential crisis and an existential fight for its life, the other side doesn't give a damn and is trying to seize values and or take over this country and or destroy it.
Wait a second. So our fundamental doctrines, our fundamental writings that are meant to protect us in everyday situations don't need to be as exact as temporary emergency measures? That doesn't make sense to me.
I didn't say they needed. I didn't say that. I said the parameters. And when you say proportionate, it's not clear. It's not clear to most people what is meant by that. Because to me, proportionate means enough force to get the job done, to make the other side stop.
I don't know what, I like numbers. I'm sorry. I don't know how you don't drown in the shower. Honestly, I'm sorry, but what in God's name would make you think I said Mark actually wants to destroy the Constitution? Seriously.
I like numbers. He's playing devil's advocate. So he's
but not only that, but I was saying by implication, not by intent. I think that I really think I like numbers is Scott Schiff.
Really?
I have a sneaking suspicion, yeah, because he makes the same types of asinine arguments, always trying to defend Trump and whatever Trump does, same type of shit. Ian Gilmore says he's a troll here and elsewhere. Okay, he can troll, but he looks like an idiot. Maybe that's why he goes by an anonymous name. I don't know. Don't really care. I'm not saying that Mark wants to abolish the Constitution. What I'm saying is when we make arguments, whatever arguments we make, the arguments have implications beyond the immediate context in which we're speaking.
And I would say, Michael, instead of throwing out the Constitution, whatever can be interpreted so broadly as to mean almost anything should be narrowed in its definition. In other words, for the Constitution, you'd have to make an amendment in order to make it very clear what the law says.
Okay. Right. Now, the proportionality thing that I just read, also, this is very important, whether you agree with it or not. And I don't know how legally it's been interpreted in court. So it may have been interpreted very much in a way that you're talking about, that it's overly restrictive. I don't know. I'm only going by what I'm seeing this morning. Nevertheless, the United States has made these agreements and entered into them. So the United States signed on to the Geneva Conventions, signed on to the Hague agreements, and a bunch of others that have disappeared off my phone for some reason.
Yep.
So now I don't know how you can come to advocate for a war that not you, Mark, I mean people, violates the Constitution, and then further advocate for it to be conducted in a way that violates the agreements that we've made, that we, by the way, would insist others be held to. I don't know. I mean, if the reciprocity thing is a problem, then we shouldn't have agreed to it.
Correct.
Right? But once you agree to it, you're bound by it. Now, somebody could say, well, I didn't agree to it. Okay, fine. I didn't agree to a lot of things either, including to this war, but here we are.
Correct.
What's this guy here? Rock Chartran wants to know, does just war theory not embolden and incentivize those who don't believe in rights to use human shields? Not from what I've seen. Now, that doesn't mean that interpretations of it haven't, and I certainly haven't been reading this my entire life. But and I'm not even saying, I read this, I'm not saying, God, this is a perfect theory, this just war theory. What I am saying, though, is that I do believe that there are moral principles that apply to war, and that within objectivist circles or objectivist thinking, I have not seen a very good, intricate argument or intricate theory of the application of objectivist ethics to war. I haven't seen it. I would like to.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, you bring up interesting points, Michael, because I think what people imply, and this could be just sloppy language, and sloppy language, means sloppy thinking. When they say by any means necessary, they mean by military means. I think they mean by, what any fairly rational person would consider military means, straight up military bombs, missiles, killing people, taking over buildings, taking over land.
So completely eviscerate the civilian population.
That may have to be a necessity, but my point is that by saying any means necessary, you included other things that one wouldn't consider rationally: raping, pillaging, torturing people to death in order to intimidate the population.
Why? You don't think that would be intimidating?
It might be, but when we say any means necessary, I think the language is sloppy. I'm saying that
Oh, okay. All right.
point
Okay.
makes
I
sense.
could go for that.
Your point makes sense in that if you
okay.
you have to again codify this to make sense so that it can't be by any means necessary, because I don't think anybody would claim that raping and torturing the civilian population.
No, but that's the implication. That's what I'm trying to show.
What's
is that the implication of saying there's no rules in war means
yes
anything goes.
That is the implication. So by implication, by me stating that we have to adjust the language, I am conceding that, there are some rules to war. The rules are that you can't do this and this and this, but you can do this. So
ultimately, Mark, to be honest, I'm woefully unsatisfied with my own thinking on war. That's one of the reasons that I like to discuss this. I'm not trying to defend just war theory. I am trying to say that there are moral parameters in war. I don't know what they are because I haven't given it enough thought, and I have not seen somebody that's maybe an expert in military who's also an objectivist put forth a theory that I can read, analyze, assess, and perhaps integrate. That's what I would like to see. Now, of course, somebody might just say, well, if you want it so bad, asshole, why don't you do it? In which case, well, I really don't have a comeback other than I'm not a military expert.
Yeah, nor am I. And so I wouldn't be able to tell you if raping and torturing a population would actually achieve military objectives or intimidate the population enough, cow them enough to say, we're done. We don't want to fight you anymore. I think that would redound against us down the road in some way. I mean, we certainly didn't have to do that to the Japanese or the Germans. They seemed ready to surrender after they were beaten in conventional warfare, right? I don't know if that's the same with Islamist regimes. They simply have a different value structure.
Okay.
And they certainly attach, Michael, a great value to enslaving populations and raping populations, and we hold that as savagery. We certainly, so.
Yes. And by the way, if we were at war with another country and they did this type of thing, did you see, did I send it to you? Rand Paul talking to Marco Rubio.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. And Rand Paul, it just eviscerated him. I mean, I want to say real quick, Ian Gilmore says he thinks Scott would admit to being Scott. I blocked him from the show, Ian, so he might not be willing to admit he was Scott. I blocked him because
I think we've been down this road before and he never admitted it.
Yeah, I don't know. But Rand Paul, they were talking about the Venezuela situation. And Rand Paul said to him, if another country came into our country real quick and easy and took our president out and arrested him, would we not consider that an act of war? And Marco said, well, but this was a 4-hour mission. So Rand went right at him again. Okay, if it's a 4-hour mission, very few casualties, they're in and out, and they took our president, is it an act of war? Of course, the answer is yes. But Rubio doesn't want to, because I think he sees what's happening. But this is a situation. I was watching Politically Incorrect, I think 26 years ago. And everybody on the panel was arguing against the Geneva Conventions, except for one guy. And the one guy said, okay, but when Americans are captured, do you want the other country to uphold these agreements? And they all said, because the answer was clearly yes, they did. You don't want people taking American POWs hostage. I mean, taking American soldiers prisoner, torturing them and executing them. Like, we don't want that happening. That's why they enter into this agreement. Now, I agree, Mark. A monkey wrench gets thrown in when you're dealing with barbarians like the Iranians or the Hamas or Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, any of these groups. I agree to that. I just don't know what the solution is, and that's what I would like to find.
I don't either, because Michael, what if it is? What if the solution is that kind of rape and torture is necessary to subdue an enemy like that? What if it is? I don't know. I prefer the cleaner solution of just wiping them out, to be honest with you. But it is something to think about it, and certainly a philosopher has to put his mind to this problem, because it's certainly a problem. And I think the way just war theory has been interpreted, it's making the innocent powers, the Western powers, subject to rules that restrain them to such a degree that they cannot win the conflicts that they've been in.
Okay, so Akira Felix tells me he's not arguing against my argument. He's pointing out in reality it doesn't work how you're saying. Okay, I want you to tell me, anybody, Mark, I can include you, what do you think Israel could have done that wouldn't have brought down accusations of genocide or criticism of them? Anything that they do would do that.
Nothing.
It's not the fault of just war theory that's causing that. And if you want to say, well, they could have, I mean, they can't nuke Gaza. Like, they can't do that, obviously, because it's right there with them.
Right.
Right. And if you think that Israel could just obliterate them completely, and I know Akira doesn't like blowback theory, but if you think that there wouldn't be blowback if Israel did that, of course there would be. So there's going to be negative consequences to point to no matter what. It's a matter of figuring out what maximizes your good consequences against your bad consequences.
I mean, Michael, there was massive blowback because the numbers were so disproportionate in the eyes of the world. Again, the eyes of the world and even international legal courts often interpreted the idea of proportionality as being a numbers game. So since only a few thousand were killed by Hamas, the fact that 30,000 or 40,000 casualties were piled on from the Israeli side, it was really difficult for people to take those numbers and square them in their minds.
And they argue that's disproportionate. And if that's what the agreements mean, and it's hard, when you're not a legal expert to really know what they're talking about, but I have heard that. On the face of it, that seems absurd to me. Right, that you would measure, well, they killed only 1,200, maybe you should only kill 2,000. That, on the face of it, seems ridiculous to me. But, I'm not a legal expert, but I also don't think that anything Israel would do would not get them criticized. I really don't know how in the Middle East, when you have a country that all the surrounding countries are religious fanatics, and you're trying, even some of your own population are religious fanatics, and yet you're trying to have a civilized modern republic, how it's not going to be problematic no matter what you do. I think it's in Israel's interest to defeat Hamas. I think it's definitely in Israel's interest to take out Hezbollah and Iran. I do think so. And but I just don't know that the answer then is do whatever it takes with no regard to any sense of morality when you're arguing that you are the moral beacon in the area. And I'm not even saying they shouldn't do that. I'm just saying the arguments that I've heard so far are less than satisfying.
I mean, it's a fair point. You make a fair point. I often relate this to my own individual situation. If something were happening to me as an individual, are there rules to making somebody who's violent against me stop? I don't think there are. I would do whatever I had to do to make the person stop the violence, and that might not be approved of, by lots of folks out there, but. When your life is on the line, when you're in an existential fight for your very life, the rules they're not going to be Marcus of Queensberry anymore. Now, I don't know what those rules look like if they exist. We've sort of decided that there are some parameters out there. We just don't know exactly what they are. Certainly, in an individual confrontation, I would do whatever I had to do to survive. And a country, we can extrapolate that same notion to a country.
What is the SPLC indictment? I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
Ian, I'm sorry, but Ian is a very learned fellow, and he really gets into some of the minutia. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's not even minutia. Okay, Megan says, apropos to nothing, do you two find group therapy helpful? It can be.
Yeah, I was in group therapy when I was like 16 years old. It wasn't so helpful for me back then, but it could be.
It's going to depend ultimately on the philosophy and the whatever therapist they have there. Persephone is very fast. Persephone is awesome. She's wonderful when she's not screwing up. Okay. Anyway, she's now giving me the double bird. All right. Mark, you're giving the capitalist thought of the day.
Hey, wait. Did anybody answer my question from yesterday?
No.
Really?
Really?
Nobody?
No.
What the fuck?
Megan, to get the most out of group therapy, find a good therapist that's running it, find good people to participate in it, and participate in it. I mean, actually, voice your opinion, your concern, take feedback, that sort of thing.
For sure.
So, capitalist thought of the day there, Chubby.
Yeah, capitalist thought of the day. Folks, we constantly hit on this point that capitalism is more than just an economic system. It is a system about protecting and defending individual rights. It's based on your freedom to do as you choose, to pursue your life and hold it as the primary value. We think that is the proper ethics that people should be living by in society. We think it'll make society very, very benevolent and prosperous. And history has shown that freer countries that are closer to capitalism are friendly, they're benevolent, and they also tend to thrive. So we want to make capitalism sexy again to the rest of the world because we think the ends will be fantastic. So remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Remember to watch us on YouTube, share it across social media platforms because we think these ethics need to get out there in the world and become the dominant moral ethics of society. Michael, you want to have a question that
Rock Chartrand, we asked the question at the end of the episode, and you answer them on YouTube. So Jenna Kleem says she answered the question. Mark, if I'm not mistaken, your question was what should be the limits in defeating Iran? It's very apropos to today's thing.
Oh, good.
So Jenna Kleem said Mark is being Churchillian. So she says that's an answer to the question. It's not. Akira Felix says, you were right, Michael. I got carried away. One thing is having criticisms of the objectivists supporting the war. Another is accusing them of being statist. I apologize. Good comment. Didn't answer the question. Weirdo Manification says Congress is the scary monster, not the Federal Reserve. None of those are answered to the question, though. Two people in the chat here have claimed that they answered it. Okay. My question for today is, why is it so hard to go to YouTube and answer the question?
For the love of God, folks.
And I'm serious. Why don't you just go to YouTube and answer the question? No, Rock, you go to YouTube and answer the question because it helps the algorithm. That's what we want people to do. When Persephone posts as me, it creeps me out a little bit, but I'll live with it. All right. So that's my question. Mark, take us out.
Michael, is there a show tomorrow?
Oh my God, I'm all over the place. There's nothing tomorrow, nothing at all. There's no Capitalist Corner on Friday, but on Friday we will be doing everyday ethics and crime, corrections, and culture. Today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we're doing everyday ethics. Today at 3:15 p.m. Eastern Time, we're doing crime, corrections, and culture. Rock is stressing me out. Rock, go to the YouTube channel, which is The Rational Alternative. Find the episode where this question is asked. Like, you'd go click on this episode for today, and in the comment section, the question's not posted there. I've just asked it there. You answer it.
Robert says, what's going on? Why is there no show tomorrow?
Well, just because Robert's one of those cool hippie types. I don't know. Okay, either way, we've got to go. I still have things to do. I've been up. It's a nightmare, but it's actually pleasant.
Folks,
either way.
You have a few days to check your premises, so please remember to do that. Check your premises. I had to get that in, man.
You did. It was good.
Okay, good. Thanks, guys. Peace.